The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, There's No Such Thing as Balance, presented by Early Growth Financial Services, Vero Law Group, and Course Corrected. My name is Amanda Young, and I'll be your moderator today from the EGFS team. A few quick notes before we get started today. The webinar will last about 60 minutes, and that'll include some time for Q&A at the end. You can also feel free to jump in and ask questions via the messenger during the webinar as we go through. And if you go ahead and type that in, we'll answer them as we go. This webinar will be recorded and sent to all the registrants within 48 hours. You can also find this recording and all of our previous recordings on our YouTube channel, Early Growth. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. I'd like to introduce our two panelists today, Mike Lilly, Business Development Manager with Early Growth Financial Services, and Jessica Olmon, Business Attorney and Managing Partner with Vero Law Group and founder of Course Corrected. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Mike now, who will introduce himself and tell us a little bit about Early Growth.
Sure. Thanks, Amanda, for that intro. I really appreciate it. So as Amanda mentioned, I'm Mike, a Business Development Manager at Early Growth. I help cover our LA market for Early Growth, and I've been on the team for about 3.5 years now. So my role is primarily business development, partnerships, and events and things like that. As you can see here from the screen, here's just kind of a quick snapshot of some of our household names in terms of clients. So bigger ones are Stitch Fix, Crunchbase, Allbirds, Indiegogo. And that's just kind of the snapshot of the early stage companies that we work with, and some of them that have done really well. So in terms of what Early Growth actually does, so you guys can obviously read this slide, but I'll just kind of give you a little bit more granular information. So we're one of the nation's leading providers of outsourced accounting and finance support, primarily for early stage venture-backed technology companies. So the easiest way to think about that are the same functions that Apple's finance team does or Facebook's finance team does. We perform those same functions for early stage companies on an outsourced basis. And really what that looks like for them is kind of one of 4 key areas. So we'll help them with their transactional accounting. We'll help them with CFO support. All of the day-to-day accounting kind of that falls under transactional accounting is really like our core service. And then we also help with 409A valuations for companies issuing stock. And then as you can imagine, everyone's going to need tax support. So we do that work both for corporate tax returns as well as personal tax returns. On top of that, we are also doing work for venture capital funds themselves. So we do fund accounting and fund administration for primarily micro VC funds and early stage seed funds as well. And then just kind of overall, the company is a national firm. And one thing that's really great about it is just kind of the breadth of expertise of the people at our company. And so when we go out to recruit accountants and CFOs, on the CFO front, if they don't come from like a Big 4 background, most of them do come from having worked with 2 venture-backed startups prior to joining Early Growth. And then we kind of cover the full spectrum from mobile e-commerce companies to life sciences. And so we're able to kind of have a huge bench of CFOs that add, domain expertise to the company itself. But then they've also probably been involved with companies that have gone from inception all the way through IPO. So we kind of have that background that has, good quality CFOs that align closely with that company, both now, but then hopefully in the future as they scale. And then one last thing too, most of our companies are kind of somewhere between the Series Seed and Series B range. And then at the end of that, you've probably either been acquired or you've outgrown our services, at which point we can also help kind of figure out a full-time solution on the accounting front for you. So that is pretty much Early Growth in a nutshell.
Well, thank you, Mike. I know Early Growth is such an awesome company, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today. My name is Jessica Olmon, and I started Vero Law Group about 6.5 years ago. And I'm an entrepreneur myself, like many of you are. And I ran my firm for about 6 months, and I looked at my financial statements, and I realized in that time I had only made $12,000, which was shocking. And of course, it was embarrassing at that time. And so I then set out on this journey to figure out how to build a successful business. So in the process, I worked with some of the best coaches and consultants in the country and probably some of the best in the world. And I really taught myself what I needed to do to have success. And we have now had over 400 clients at my law firm. And I looked at this a couple years ago and I realized not only have I been an entrepreneur, but also all these 400 plus clients are entrepreneurs. So I've kind of seen it all. People have huge success, people have terrible failures, and everything in between. And the other thing that I had done along the way was I have built a life that I love. And so I have this philosophy that's I don't need to take a vacation from my life. And I realized that I had a lot of information and content and also a really great way of helping people to build both a profitable business and a lifestyle that they love. And so I started about a year and a half ago creating Course Corrected. And Course Corrected, the whole philosophy of it is you shouldn't have to take a vacation from your life. And in order to love a life that you live, you've got to also have a profitable business to support it. So obviously this is a product that's for entrepreneurs to help them build their companies and also a lifestyle that they love. And this today, the topic that we're talking about is really one of the foundations of this idea, because what we're talking about is creating a life that works for you in the midst of being an entrepreneur where you could easily work 24 hours a day. You're being pulled in all different directions. And then we also tend to be the types of people who have a lot of interests. So there are a lot of different ways that we could be spending our time. And I think we could go ahead and get started with the actual topic. So what we're talking about is this whole philosophy that really the idea of work-life balance is completely flawed. And I think that it's actually outdated. You know, in the old days, it used to be more people would just be choosing how to spend their time. And the reality that we have now is we're so inundated with all people, you know, wanting our attention and advertisements and all kinds of entertainment. And then if you think of it just as an entrepreneur, building your business, all the different things that you could be doing at any given time in your family. And so what we're really proposing today is that you take the idea of work-life balance and just completely put it out of your mind. Because it really implies this idea that it's possible to kind of have it all and have everything evenly balanced. And it also, to me, sounds like if I spend extra time working on my company, then I really need to balance it out and spend that equal amount of time with my family. And I think that if that's what you consciously choose, that could be possible, but realistically, none of us can do it all. So what we'd like to suggest, and really a starting point for building a life that you love, even within your busy entrepreneur lifestyle, is what we call work-life harmony. And so work-life harmony is the idea that I'm starting from being the master creator of my life, and I'm going to sit down and take the time to think about what I really want to get out of my life and what my ideal circumstances look like. And then I'm going to create a life from there, regardless of what other people think, regardless of what looks balanced or may actually be more balanced. It's more of what's going to light me up about a life. And that is the starting point for work-life harmony. This is a quote that I love, and it's really letting go of the idea of work-life balance and then thinking about how do I want to spend my days? How do I want my daily life to look, and what kind of time do I want to have to do what kinds of activities, what kind of money, how much work do I want to do, what kind of work? And you can see if you really start to dig into this and look at your own life, it's a really interesting to look at what are the things that I'm doing that I don't want to be doing. And if we let the idea of balance go, we can start to find ways to let the things go that we don't want to be doing or having other people do them or however you want to replace it. But in the big picture, this is about creating a life that I love to live. And I know this really amazing person who I'm sure, Mike, you know too. His name is Matt Saverick. He's actually at Headspace now. And he recently posted this quote online that said, "How I live my day is how I live my life." And I just thought that was so meaningful because it's so true. You know, that the ways that we're living our daily lives really makes up the sum of our life. And for people like us who are running our own businesses and creating our own future and creating our destiny, it's more important than ever to be focused on that and to find ways that we're creating our own life in work-life harmony rather than in balance.
Absolutely.
What do you think about that, Mike?
Yeah, I think too often, you know, we're heads down in our work and things like that, but we actually don't think back to kind of the big picture and the big vision that we have. And I think that's one way that we kind of get out of sync with what our company actually does or how we actually spend our time. And so, especially with Saverick's quote there, you know, your day essentially needs to kind of add up to your vision is the way I like to look at that. And, you know, if it's not, you probably should kind of refocus on your vision. And that kind of gives you a little bit more clarity into, you know, how you should set goals, how you should kind of grow your company and things like that.
Yeah, and I think that this is a big challenge for a lot of people because when we already feel like my day's completely maxed out, what do you mean you want me to sit down and think about my vision? But the way I see it is that life can either just be happening to us, which, by the way, is what most human beings are kind of in the default of. So there's nothing wrong with it. But I just think we know that it's possible to create a lifestyle and a life and a business and everything that we love and to really be enjoying every single day. And the truth is that it takes an investment of time and energy and thought more than just letting all the circumstances of life come at us. And I think that idea of work-life balance kind of comes from that circumstance where it's like, oh, my work is happening to me and I really need to find a balance and spend more time with my family or something like that, rather than being the controller of my destiny and getting to choose how I spend my time and how I spend my days. Okay, so this one is such a big picture, but let's just use this as a starting point of where you could begin to start to create what is work-life harmony to you. And the thing that I want to make clear here is that having a really solid vision of what you want your life to look like, and also we could include in that your ideal day, this is so important to creating a life that you love, that actually it really is the foundation of everything. And I want to also say that for most of us, we weren't raised dreaming or thinking like this. And I'm going to explain to you why it's so important, but I first want to acknowledge that it can be really difficult. So most of us would, let me just say, if I asked most people, they would say, of course I know what I want in the future, and of course I know what my vision is. But if I ask them to actually write it down, they might be able to write like a half a page, because they might say things like, I want to earn $5 million in revenue, and I want to have a great relationship with my husband, and they have, you know, some big picture kind of ideas. But the type of vision that we're talking about here, to make it meaningful enough to serve you, the type of vision that you need is something that's so detailed and so intricate that you can actually feel what you would feel like experiencing that vision. Now, why is it so important? Why am I proposing that you need to flex this muscle and figure out how to create a vision and work on it and develop it and be able to feel how exciting and juicy it is? Well, the reason is that it's a lot easier to live your life by default. As I mentioned in the beginning, you have all these people trying to get your time and your energy and your attention. And if you don't have a vision that's stronger than all of that, what ends up happening is that your days are just sucked up by everybody else's emergency or everybody else doing a great job of getting your attention. So really the only way that we can create work-life harmony is to get crystal clarity on what that looks like for each of us. So the bigger picture of all of this is that when you have created this vision and in all this detail and with the feeling that I'm talking about, what you have for yourself is a map. And the map is actually what guides you in making your daily decisions of how you're spending your time and money. It's going to guide you into creating this work-life harmony. Okay, so on this slide, the point that we're trying to make here is that even when you create your ideal day, your lifestyle may change throughout the days and the weeks. And so the best example that I could give is that for my work-life harmony, I have a daughter who's 7 years old. And for my work-life harmony, I love what I do. I love building my businesses. I love the clients that I work with. I'm just really on fire about what we're doing in both. And so I love to work. I see my daughter on some of the weekdays from 7 to 8:30 when the nanny leaves and then when she goes to bed. And then I have her every other weekend. So I don't see her a lot during the week. And I am okay with that. And also I like to take her on vacation several times a year, usually where I'll do no phone and no email. So we might go on a trip abroad. I know, it's good. I really like it. And then for me, that's harmony. And then for you, that might be something completely different, but that's how I'm choosing to create my life. And Mike, why don't you talk about what that is for you?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, as you can imagine, we do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, and that work tends to be around the clock. It doesn't really stop. I do have this kind of loose cutoff that, you know, past a certain point at the night, which is usually like 9 or 10, I'm not going to do any more work, and I just roll it over into the next morning. And I think there's this idea that in theory you could always be working, but if you do that, you're really going to kind of get burnt out over time. So, you know, making some time in the evening. In terms of like my personal life, you know, my fiance is in med school, so arguably she's, you know, more busy than I am doing things like 30-hour calls, you know, getting ready for residency, doing interviews at, you know, various programs throughout the country. So I also too, you know, at least for like a half day or a day on the weekend, try not to, you know, look at email or my phone as much as I would typically do on a normal day. And I think that's really important, you know, just in terms of like resetting kind of your inner harmony there, and being refreshed. And it's a nice reboot. I haven't been able to do the vacation one, Jessica, so I'm envious of that, because it's hard to kind of step away from business development and sales, but I'll have to work on that for sure.
I understand. I've spent literally several years putting systems into place so that I can do that and to leave to go on the vacation where I do no phone and no email.
Sure.
And then to be honest with you, my work-life harmony on that point has actually changed over the past couple of years, because it used to be a top priority that I could go away for weeks at a time and do no phone and no email, and my business would just operate like clockwork without me there. And as I've started doing more and more travel, it's become a greater priority for me to be just completely mobile and be anywhere that I want in the world, running my businesses, and then figuring out how I can keep working while I'm gone, but maybe the times that I'm traveling, working less. So now we've been changing a little bit what my work-life harmony and how the companies work. But in the big picture, I think that, you know, you knowing what it is that you want, which is taking a day off on the weekends without checking your phone and doing all that, that's got to make it so that you're really enjoying your life more, because it's like you're controlling and living the life that you want to be living, rather than just feeling like a victim to the phone calls and emails, and I'm sure the hundreds that you get a day.
Yeah, I think, you know, one more thing to share here too is, you know, the principals in our company. So Gadiel, who's our president, and, you know, my direct manager, and also David, who's our CEO, you know, early growth is up to 150 people, and both of them run this company really successfully. And both of them also every single day take out time for, whether it's a workout or, picking up a kid from school. I think no matter, how busy you become or how successful the company comes and more people, start prying for your time, there's always time for the things that are the most important to you. And I think that's, whether that's at my level or at their level, I think that's the thing that you should also be cognizant of is there's still time in the day for, for you time too. So I thought I would share that too, just because I think that goes to show people that, oh, it really can be done.
Yeah, and I think that what's really interesting about that is the most successful people that I know personally, and especially I'm thinking of some of the mentors that I've had who are bringing in huge amounts of business or running really successful companies, they actually are not people that ever come across to me as frazzled. And they seem to have really good work-life harmony and are living, and they work hard for sure, but they're living a really great life for them. And so that's been a really interesting thing for me to look at is if I feel like my day is completely full and that I need to work 15 hours in the day, which years ago, I literally was probably working like that. And I started to look around and realize that the most successful people I know don't work like that. They're not running themselves into the ground. And so that's actually a great starting point because when I realized that, then I realized there's something that I'm not doing right here. How could I be working so hard? I'm not nearly as successful as those people, and they're not working the way that I am. And then it allows me to start to look at the ways that I'm building my business, which actually in a lot of ways were not as efficient as they could be. I wasn't having the help that I needed to be having. And then realizing that I was getting in my own way. And so I kind of used that as a guide. And I think what you're talking about with the founders of early growth is probably a similar thing. Of course, they're busy and they're working hard and all those things, but I've never seen either of those guys out and about looking frazzled or like they've got to be on their phone the whole time or anything remotely close to that.
Yep, absolutely.
Great.
Before I jump into this one, Amanda, do we have any questions so far or any comments, things like that?
No, not yet. But if anybody has questions, please feel free to ask and I'll jump in and ask them for you.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, so I really like this idea because it touches on what we were just starting to talk about here, but this idea of, being busy versus being productive. And, I've done a ton of meetings with entrepreneurs over the year, and there's kind of two trains of thought here. The one person that tells you, how crazy their schedule is and, you can never get on it for like the next 3 to 6 months and how, they're kind of aimless almost in terms of like their vision and how they execute on it. Because I honestly think that, maybe unless you're like the CEO of Apple or something like that, if you're Tim Cook, then maybe you truly have travel lined up for the next 6 months. But I think what you find from these people, though, after talking to them, just being so busy, that you can take all the meetings in the world, you can do all the phone calls in the world, but some of that may not actually move the needle in your company. And I think for me, what's important is we all have monthly goals here at the business development team at Early Growth, but we also set goals for ourselves just kind of internally, and it helps me kind of frame how I make decisions in terms of how I spend my time, which is, if someone that I really appreciate makes an introduction to me, I'm always going to take that meeting and just kind of see where it goes, or, at least take an intro call just to see if there's some way that we can work out together. But also too, if, I randomly, let's say, get hit up on LinkedIn for something about a quote unquote like strategic partnership, and I just do a quick search, I realize that that person maybe is not going to, get me any closer to like the types of companies we like to work with and things like that. And so perhaps with that person, and you go about it in a cordial way and you're not trying to be rude, but I think this idea kind of ties into the bigger idea here, which is it's okay to say no to things. And especially after you have a network of, a couple hundred people, it's really one of those things where does taking this meeting, or maybe could this meeting be an email or this phone call be an email? Does that actually really kind of move the needle in terms of where I'd like to go personally, but then also like my goals for the company as well. And I think that's really important here. And some of the most successful people, I think, Jessica, to your point, that always seem to have time for people, they've got time in their schedule to grow their company still, and it's not overloaded. They also block off enough time where they can also be responsive to either their customers or partners and things like that. And they're not so, back to back to back. So I guess what I'm saying is, work hard for sure. And don't think we're advocating here for like a, 6-month sabbatical or something like that. But it's also just really about trying to find what are the things that actually, get to your goals and get to that vision. And I also think that also helps you make decisions on how to act fast and how to make, quick decisions that actually move the needle here.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think on that point, a lot of times when people have a hard time making decisions about what to do, or they feel completely overwhelmed with their time, a lot of times that can be traced directly to the fact that they don't have clarity, and probably don't have clarity on the big picture vision and where they're headed. And then even within your company, not having clarity on what activities are actually moving the needle forward. So to Mike, to your example on just taking a meeting with anybody, regardless of whether they're actually in a place to refer you business or become a client, or that maybe when you're very first starting out, maybe you might start doing that. But the point is, as time goes on, we need to get clarity on what's actually helping our business and moving it forward. And we can do that by measuring things within our company, the way we're spending our time and the way we're spending our money compared to the results that we're getting. We can use that, we can measure that by what's our big picture vision, and is this activity going to get us closer? And then, as you started with on this point, Mike, the key to all of it is that I get so clear on those things, and I have so much clarity about my life and my business, that I figure out a way to graciously tell people no and clear out of my path anything that isn't getting me results and isn't leading me toward what I want in terms of my vision. And of course, the piece of that is the work-life harmony of it. So as long as we are just running around being so busy and being crazy, that really will never grow a successful business in the way that we want. There are people who are completely crazy and out of their minds, and they can build up a successful business in terms of money. But I promise you that just chasing after money and just chasing after some kind of revenue or even end result, like selling the business and something like that, if you're not thoughtful along the way about the life that you want and the person that you want to become, what usually ends up happening is a person reaches that result that they thought was going to bring them some happiness, and they're completely miserable. So the productivity, actually being productive and actually focusing on what result you want and the person you want to become in the meantime, has to be a key component of building this business if you want to have real success. And I think that even, Mike, what you were just talking about even the busiest people that we know, they have time to respond to emails. They make time to meet with the people that are important to them. And I think that says a lot. They're not the people who are running around like, oh, I'm so busy, I can't stand it, and kind of using that as a badge of honor, because in some way we all instinctively know that that's not really leading you towards success.
Absolutely.
I was just going to throw in there before we go on to the next one, if anyone has questions about how these things apply to your life, or if you're sitting there thinking, well, this is all great to say in theory, but here's what I'm experiencing, and it's a totally different situation, or this doesn't apply, or whatever your thoughts are, ideas, we would love to hear from you, and we can address that too, because honestly, all of this that we're talking about really applies to everyone as an entrepreneur, and we all have our unique situations and circumstances. So we're glad to talk about those, or talk about this topic in any way that would be helpful for anyone listening.
Absolutely. So just kind of, on this work-life harmony, I think to step back here and look at kind of the 30,000-foot view, one of the things that kind of keeps driving a lot of the people that I see here, and sometimes they have to make sacrifices in terms of their time or their family. And I also think you can put certain things on hold, which we didn't really talk about, and then start those things up later, especially as you get started, because that balance is really not going to be there. But in terms of accepting this and being fine with kind of the harmony that you create, I think that a lot of the people that are really good at this also keep thinking back to the original reason why they started the company. And for some of us, yes, that has to do with money. For others, that maybe has to do with lifestyle. And for hopefully most of you, that has to do with the passion of the product or the service that you're building. And really kind of looking back at that. And that's going to really carry you through the hard times where maybe you are too busy. Maybe you are spending, all your waking hours on this project. But this is the thing that really drives, from what I've seen as the most successful entrepreneurs, which is, they don't give up just because, they didn't hit their quarterly revenue goal or something like that. It's just that they don't want to see this fail, so they keep driving through to the end. Because chances are, there are going to be rough patches. You are going to have employees that leave, maybe, or a co-founder that leaves or something like that. Or maybe, there's a huge competitor or a huge company that wasn't a competitor that now is. So it's really about the original purpose of why you started to kind of, help you kind of carry through and hopefully kind of achieve this work-life harmony fit. At least that's how I like to think about it. Jessica, I don't know if that's, consistent with how you view this, but that's something that I think is important.
I agree. Keeping your big picture in mind is definitely hugely important. And the thing that I think about Mike's references, and we've talked about it a couple times in this presentation, this idea of maybe you have to work really hard in the beginning. And I think that is something that most of us experience. But I'd also like to propose that too is a choice. So I actually work with a lot of clients who start off by telling me, I only want to work on this business from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. And then I pick my kids up and then I go do XYZ, and they want to have their evening. Now, I'm not saying that always their life plays out like that. And especially as we get going, and we all have to realize that we have to create space somewhere to work on our businesses instead of just in our businesses. But the point I'm making is that person really has accepted that they're going to have slower growth than maybe the person who is investing 10, 12 hours a day working on their business. And if you're at a point where you are investing 10 or 12 hours a day working on your business, the question is this what I want? Does this create work-life harmony for me? And maybe the answer is yes. If your vision is you want to build up this amazing company and you want to do it quickly and you're going to sell it, and that involves you really working your butt off for all this time to make that happen, then go for it, but just make sure that it's a decision rather than you feel like this is happening to you. And if you're working all these hours and you feel like this is happening to you and you're just grinding it out and you don't like it, it's not what you want, then that's the perfect opportunity to start to explore this idea of work-life harmony. And what do I need to create? What do I need to change for this to be working for my life? Because again, how you live your days is how you live your life. And if you're living your days miserable and overwhelmed and unhappy, then you've really got to ask yourself, is that how I want to live my life? What do you think about that, Mike?
I totally agree with that. I think, if the goal was to build a successful business, but then, intrinsically you feel that, after a decade or so, let's say if you started a company, you got it to IPO or exited before that, and you put everything else on hold, your kids grew up, or you got away from some of the relationships you used to have, and let's just say you had a huge exit, is that really successful? Because now you're kind of, sure, you've got all the money in the world now, but then all the things that were truly dear to you, what are those things now? And I think that's just one example. For you, that could be something completely different. But I also think, to that person's point, the one that has the company where, they work from 9 to 4 and they're in their kids' lives, for them, that's like a successful story. I think it's going to be your own vision of what you kind of hope to have happen in the future. But, you'll never get there if you don't actually set the goals and actually take some time to, get out of your phone or get out of your email and look at the big picture here and really what are you actually working towards. I think that's kind of the main question that I keep coming back to here.
Yes. Yeah. And what are you working towards for both your business and for yourself personally?
Sure. Absolutely.
Because they're so intertwined as we're building our own businesses. And when you live life like that, when you live life where you're constantly deciding, what do I want for myself personally? What's the business that I'm building? Then you're appreciating and enjoying your life. And there's no need to have a midlife crisis or wake up one day and realize, oh my God, this isn't what I want or who I want to be. And you're appreciating and enjoying your daily life because you're choosing how you create it.
Yeah, I think one thing you could do too, and I don't like thinking like this just because, you want the company to work out, let's just say, but what would could you live with yourself or look yourself in the mirror if you did spend, let's just not say 10 years, because maybe you probably shut it down before that, but let's say you spent 5 years, 7 years on this and it actually didn't work out. I think, looking at that, it's really about like, well, do I regret doing this? And hopefully the answer is no, because you picked something that, you were so passionate about in working here that ultimately, if it doesn't work out, it's not a waste of time because you also put things in place to, not ignore your family or take some time out personally to grow. And I think, you can learn a lot from a failing business if that's what ends up happening. But if, you put all your marbles into the company and ignored everything else, you might not have much to show for it after so many years go by, right? So I think that's also why, really hopefully the company does work out and, you meet all your goals and successes. But if it doesn't, do you have something to kind of grow from that experience or to fall back onto?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that ultimately with even well, I found in my life, the only thing that I've ever regretted was something that I did unconsciously. So if you are consciously choosing to live your life like that, and maybe you're consciously choosing to work really hard and not build relationships with your family, and at least if you're being conscious and aware about it, that's got to be a lot better if something happens than if you're just completely oblivious and just letting it take over your life. And then also on that point is usually the lessons that we can learn from these life experiences that we have had, especially where we were making conscious choices about how to live our life, the experiences that we have teach us a lot. So even in the worst of failure, maybe in the case of the worst of failure, we can actually learn the most. And I like to call those expensive lessons because and the lesson from it. So I appreciate you bringing that up too, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Amanda, do you want to go on to the next slide?
Yeah.
So thank you. So this is just a sampling of the questions that we ask for people about joining Course Corrected. And in the big picture, the things that we work on in Course Corrected are the same things that we've been talking about today. So what is beginning of the course is on mindset. So if you think about it, the business that you have right now is a product of the way that you think, because you're thinking and then you take action and then you get results. So the only way that we can actually create a different result in our businesses is to change the way that we think. So we're working on a variety of things around the way that we think, but ultimately all success starts in the mind first. And then we also work on a lot of business strategy. So we've touched on a couple of those things, but in the big picture, they revolve around metrics, understanding how to spend your time and money in your business so that you actually can create a more profitable company, creating a company culture and amazing teams so that you're supported, and what systems and processes do you need to put in place so that your company is growing and it can operate like clockwork without you there. And in the big picture, as I mentioned, we're always working on what is the lifestyle that you want to live, who's the person that you want to be, so that what we don't want to have happen is that we work on this business and create this amazing business that can operate without you there. And then you have all this freedom and you wake up and realize, but you don't like yourself and you don't like the life that you're actually living. So these two things go hand in hand. And most of the people that I work with doing this kind of consulting and through Course Corrected are service providers. So we specialize in working with them. And I would love to have you look at more on coursecorrected.com. I also have webinars, and I would love to connect with anyone on social media. I do a lot of content to help entrepreneurs build their companies, and I love everything entrepreneur. So I would love to hear from you anytime. And I'm so happy that you're here today.
Before we got started too, guys, Jessica also runs a really awesome Facebook Live like webcast every single Monday morning. And she does a great job on all of her social channels too. So I'd highly encourage you to check that out as well.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
So yeah, just to kind of, wrap up with early growth, we're here in the market, obviously, to directly help you with your finance and accounting, your tax, your valuation services as well. But I'd, be willing to bet that all the folks here at our company just connect with us, because we love to help you, even if we can't help you directly with our services. We also put on a ton of free educational events, both in terms of venture capital panels in every single one of our markets, lunch and learns, office hours. I have many templates on how to build a pitch deck, an executive summary. So we also give entrepreneurs resources for, building their business. And, a lot of you will be going out to fundraise and things like that. And then also a big part of what I do and how I spend my time is just not only looking at your business from the finance and accounting perspective, but also looking at it from its perspective in its entirety to see if there's other ways or other people that, I could introduce you to, or our company could introduce you to help you out with other aspects of your business, whether that's legal with Jessica, she does a great job with that, or, perhaps marketing, banking, HR support. Perhaps you started at a WeWork or cross campus or some other co-working space and need to move offices. We have relationships really in all of those different fields. So I think for us, it's, early growth is fantastic and we love it too. But I think, true to our mission and our core is, we're entrepreneur first. So, we're obviously there to help you with your finance and accounting, but we actually just want to see the business succeed as a whole. So we can kind of hopefully point you in the right direction with all of that, not just finance and accounting.
And I would like to say that we've had multiple mutual clients with early growth, and it's such a professional firm. As Mike mentioned, they have so many resources and so many opportunities for clients and just people they connect with. And so I recommend them to clients whenever possible. If you're serious about building a successful business, they're an awesome group to work with, and even to talk to about how and when is the right time to work with them.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. I really appreciate that. Amanda, too, did I miss anything that we're putting on the marketing front? I know you quarterback all of that, so I wanted to see if you could speak to some of the other stuff that we do either online or on the events front, stuff like that.
Yeah, we have a couple of events coming up. They're all on our website on the events page. We have another webinar actually next week about how to present your online image and work with that. So that one should be pretty informative as well. And we're always doing webinars. They all show up on the events page, and we promote them all on our social as well. Our Twitter's on this page. I'll go ahead and transfer over to that so that everybody can see how to contact both Early Growth and Course Corrected. Anything else either of you want to say to wrap things up before we open it up to questions?
I don't think so. I'm ready for questions.
I'm ready for questions as well.
Great. So if anybody has questions, go ahead and type them in now. We'll hang out for a couple of minutes and see if anybody has any questions before we wrap it up.
And I guess what I'll say while we wait is this is such a good time of year to start thinking about these things. I don't know about you guys, but for me at the beginning of a year, I'm just really motivated and incentivized to think about what was going on in my life and my business last year that I want to change, what worked, how do I see this growing? And so we can kind of use the energy and the momentum of this time of year to really start to dig in to creating work-life harmony. And the thing I would like to promise you is that it is possible for each of you, no matter how crazy or out of control or seemingly impossible it looks in your situation. So it's a great time, better late than never, to get started in thinking about this in your own life.
So it doesn't look like we have any questions right now, but I will be emailing everybody after the webinar with the link to the recording. So go ahead and reach out if you have any questions after the fact. And you can get in touch with either Jessica or Mike, or just respond to me from the webinar directly. And we are always happy to help. And we'll go ahead and say goodbye now and thank everybody for joining us. That was super informative, and hope everybody has a good rest of their week.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.